Have you ever held water in your hands and watched it slip through your fingers? No matter how tightly you tried to hold on, the harder you gripped, the faster it escaped. That's exactly what life feels like when we're trying to control everything. We think if we just plan more, push harder, hold on tighter, we'll finally feel safe. But instead, the very things we're desperate to protect start slipping away: our peace, our joy, even the people we love. And here's the strange part. The moment you stop forcing life to go your way, something almost magical happens. Opportunities appear you didn't see before. The right people cross your path, and that knot in your chest finally loosens. Buddhist wisdom has been whispering this truth for thousands of years. When you let go, life begins to flow naturally. Not because you gave up, but because you stopped standing in the way of the very peace you've been searching for. You see, our constant need to control is like building a dam in the middle of a river. We think we're managing the flow, but really, we're blocking it. And over time, that pressure builds into stress, anxiety, and exhaustion. We forget that life already knows how to move forward without our constant interference. Just like a river knows how to find the sea, without anyone telling it which way to go. When I first learned this, it hit me hard. I thought letting go meant losing control, losing direction, maybe even losing myself. But what I didn't realize was that I'd already been losing myself by holding on so tightly. Every what if was stealing pieces of my present moment. Every plan I obsessed over was pushing me further away from the life I actually wanted to live. Letting go doesn't mean you stop caring. It doesn't mean you stop trying. It means you stop trying to force what was never meant to be forced. It means you shift from wrestling with life to dancing with it. From gripping the steering wheel until your knuckles turn white, to trusting that the road can carry you. And here's the paradox. When you loosen your grip, you don't lose control, you gain freedom. Freedom to breathe deeper. Freedom to notice the beauty right in front of you. Freedom to show up fully in the present moment, instead of constantly chasing a future that hasn't happened yet. In this video, I'm going to share timeless Buddhist insights that can help you release that exhausting need to control and step into a calmer, lighter, more natural way of living. These aren't abstract ideas you'll hear once and forget. They're practical shifts you can make today, the kind that ripple out into every part of your life, your relationships, your work, even the way you feel when you wake up in the morning. So if you've been feeling like life is one long uphill battle, if you've been carrying the weight of what if for far too long, stay with me. Because once you understand this one truth about letting go, you'll never see your life the same way again. And in the next few minutes, you might just realize that the thing you've been chasing all this time has been quietly waiting for you to stop running. 1. The mind is like soil. You are the gardener. I want you to picture something with me for a moment. Your mind is like a piece of land. And every day, whether you realize it or not, you are the gardener. I once knew a man named Daniel. On the outside, he was successful. Good job, nice home, even the kind of smile that made you think he had it all figured out. But inside, his garden was overrun. Every morning before his feet even touched the floor, Daniel's mind was already planting seeds. Not seeds of peace or gratitude, but seeds of fear. What if I mess up this presentation? What if I lose my job? What if people find out I'm not as good as they think I am? He didn't see it at first, but those what ifs were like weeds, small at the beginning, almost invisible. Yet day after day, they grew. And because he watered them with his attention, they started to take over everything. Daniel noticed he was tense all the time. He snapped at his kids without meaning to. Even when good things happened, he couldn't enjoy them. Because in the back of his mind, the weeds were whispering, "Don't relax. Something bad could still happen." One day, an older colleague invited him for tea. They sat quietly for a while before the man said, "Daniel, your mind is like a garden. You've been growing fear for so long, you've forgotten you can plant something else." That hit him hard, because he realized he'd been waiting for the outside world to give him peace. But peace doesn't work like that. It grows from the inside out. That was the day Daniel started changing how he planted. In the mornings, before looking at his phone, he'd sit for just 5 minutes and ask himself, "What seed do I want to plant today?" Some days, it was gratitude, thinking of one thing he was thankful for. Some days, it was compassion, wishing well for someone he struggled with. And little by little, the weeds began to shrink. Not because he fought them, but because he stopped feeding them. Buddhist wisdom tells us, whatever you plant in your mind, your life will reflect it back to you. If you plant fear, you live in a fearful world. If you plant peace, you live in a peaceful one. And I know, it sounds simple, but it's not always easy. Because those old seeds, those old weeds, they've been there a long time. Sometimes, they try to come back. And that's okay. A good gardener doesn't get angry at weeds. They just keep planting better seeds. So, I want to ask you, if your mind is a garden, what have you been planting lately? If you're brave enough, type just one word in the comments, the seed you want to plant today. It might be peace. It might be patience. Or maybe just hope. One word. That's your start. Daniel's garden didn't change overnight. But month after month, year after year, the fear that once ruled him started to fade. He still had challenges. Of course, storms still came, but now his roots were deeper. And when the wind blew, he didn't break. Maybe today is the day you decide to plant something different. Because the truth is, the outside world will always shift and change. But you have the power to tend your own soil. And what grows there will shape the way you see everything. 2. Letting go is not giving up, but the true source of strength. I want to tell you about someone named Claire. For years, Claire thought strength meant holding on. Holding on to her plans. Holding on to the people she loved even when they wanted to walk away. Holding on to the image of the perfect life she'd built in her head. She worked hard, made lists, triple-checked every detail. If something went wrong, she'd push even harder. Because deep down, she believed if she could just control enough, nothing bad would happen. But life doesn't work like that, does it? One spring, everything seemed to fall apart at once. The project she'd poured months into got canceled. A friend she trusted deeply moved away without much explanation. And a health scare forced her to slow down something she hated doing. She told me, "I felt like I was drowning, and the more I fought, the deeper I sank." Then, one afternoon, she went for a walk by the river. The water was high from the rain, rushing and wild. She watched a branch floating downstream, carried easily by the current. And she realized the branch wasn't fighting. It wasn't weaker than the water. It was simply moving with it. In that moment, something shifted. Claire began to understand that letting go isn't the same as giving up. It's trusting the flow of life enough to stop clinging. It's making space for what's meant to come next. Buddhist wisdom calls this a mind that is steady and unshaken. It's not passive. It's not pretending nothing matters. It's knowing you can't control every wave, but you can choose how you meet it. So, Claire started small. When plans changed, she practiced breathing, instead of rushing to fix everything. When someone disappointed her, she let herself feel the sting but didn't build a wall of resentment. She began to see that the moment she loosened her grip, life seemed to open new doors. And here's the thing, letting go doesn't mean nothing happens. It means something new can happen. When your hands are clenched, they can't receive anything. But when they're open, suddenly, there's room. Maybe you've been there too. Maybe you've held on so tight to an outcome, a relationship, or even an idea of who you should be, that you didn't notice how heavy it had become. I wonder, what would happen if you set it down for a while? Not forever, just long enough to breathe, to see what life might hand you instead. If you're listening right now, type the number 2". The comments, if there's something you're ready, or at least willing to loosen your grip on. It could be small. It could be big. Just the act of naming it is a kind of release. Claire still has challenges. She still makes plans, she just doesn't hold them like they're the only way forward. She says it's like sailing. You still set your direction, but you let the wind help you instead of fighting it. And that is real strength, because it takes courage to trust. It takes faith to believe that life can carry you where you're meant to go. So maybe today, you can try it. Just for one moment, unclench your hands and see what flows in. 3. Worry belongs to tomorrow. Peace is found in this very moment. I want to share a story about a man named Daniel. Daniel was the kind of person who lived in the future, not because he had a time machine, but because his mind was always there, thinking about what might go wrong, running scenarios in his head over and over. At night, he couldn't sleep. In the morning, he'd wake up already tense, his stomach in knots. He thought, if I prepare for every possible disaster, maybe I can stop them from happening. But what he didn't realize is that worry is like watching a movie that hasn't been filmed yet. It's all in your mind. A projection. One afternoon, Daniel was talking to an old friend, Maria. She noticed he kept wringing his hands, distracted. Finally, she asked, "Daniel, where are you right now?" He laughed and said, "I'm right here, with you." But she shook her head. Your body's here. Your mind is in a dozen possible tomorrows." Those words landed hard. Because deep down, Daniel knew she was right. All that worrying, and not a single thing he feared had actually happened. But in his heart, he'd lived through them all over and over. That night, he tried something new. He sat in his chair, closed his eyes, and listened to the hum of his refrigerator, the faint sound of rain against the window, his own breathing. For the first time in a long while, he wasn't in tomorrow. He was here, and he noticed something. Here was peaceful. Buddhist wisdom teaches that peace doesn't live in the past or the future. It lives right here, in this exact breath. The future is just a thought. The past is just a memory. The present is the only place life actually happens. Daniel began practicing this daily. Every time his mind tried to jump ahead to next week's meeting, to next month's bills, to a what if that might never come, he'd gently pull it back. What's true right now? He'd ask himself. He realized that right now, he was safe. Right now, he had enough. Right now, there was nothing chasing him, nothing broken, nothing to fix. And that right now was the only time he could actually live. Maybe you felt this too. That heavy pull toward what might be. That voice in your head that says, if I don't worry about it, I'm not being responsible. But worry isn't responsibility. It's just fear wearing a disguise. So let me ask you, if you stopped feeding tomorrow with your attention, what might today feel like? If you're listening to this, and you've ever caught yourself lost in a future that doesn't exist yet, type the letter P in the comments. P for present. Let's remind each other where real peace is found. Daniel still plans for the future. He still saves money, books, flights, makes appointments. But he no longer lives there. He says it's like planting a seed. You give it what it needs, then you trust it will grow in its own time. You don't dig it up every day to make sure. And the surprising thing? The less he worried, the more clearly he could think. Decisions came easier. Life felt lighter. Peace had been there all along. It was just waiting for him to come home to the present moment. So maybe, right now, take one deep breath. Look around, and remember the only place you can touch peace is here. Not tomorrow. Not yesterday. Only now. 4. Imagination is often heavy and usually not real. Let me tell you about Claire. Claire had a habit she didn't even realize was exhausting her. Every time her phone buzzed with an unknown number, her heart raced. She imagined it was bad news. If her boss called her into the office, she pictured herself being fired. If her husband was late coming home, she imagined an accident on the freeway. And here's the thing, none of it had actually happened. Not once. But in her mind, she had lived through every possible disaster. She had felt the panic, the grief, the chaos, all without leaving her living room. One day, while scrolling online, Claire stumbled across a short line from a Buddhist monk. It said, "Ask yourself, is this happening now or only in my mind?" That question stopped her cold. Because in that moment, she realized 90% of her stress came from events that weren't real. They were just pictures her mind had painted. Vivid ones, convincing ones, but still imaginary. That night, something happened again. Her teenage son didn't answer his phone. Instantly, her thoughts spun into a storm. What if he's hurt? What if he's in trouble? But then she remembered the monk's words. She paused. She asked herself, is this happening now or only in my mind? The answer was clear. Right now, she was just sitting at the kitchen table. Her hands were on a warm cup of tea. Her son was simply not answering. And 5 minutes later, he walked through the door, smiling, holding a bag of groceries. The truth is, imagination is a powerful tool. But when it runs wild with fear, it drains our energy. We carry the weight of tragedies that never come. We live in emergency mode for problems that don't exist. Buddhist wisdom teaches that thoughts are not the enemy, but believing every thought is. The mind can be like a storyteller who loves drama, and we forget that not every story is true. When you start asking, is this happening now? Something shifts. You reclaim your power. You pull your energy back from the shadows into the light of what's actually real. Claire began using this question every day. In traffic, during work meetings, even at night, when her mind tried to pull her into worst-case scenarios. Each time, she'd return to what she could see, hear, and touch in that very moment. She says it felt like taking off a backpack full of heavy rocks she'd been carrying for years. So let me ask you, how many of your worries are happening right now? And how many are just the mind's what-if theater? If you're watching this, take a moment and type the number 1 inch in the comments if you've ever realized that most of your stress was just imagined. It's a small way of saying, I see it now. The more you practice, the easier it gets. You start to see which thoughts are rooted in reality and which are just passing clouds. And the less you cling to the clouds, the more sunlight reaches you. Because in this exact breath, unless something real is unfolding in front of you, you are safe. And in safety, you can rest. You can think more clearly. You can live more fully. Claire still has thoughts that try to pull her into fear. But now, she smiles at them and says, not now. She returns to the only place life is happening here. And maybe, just maybe, you can too. 5. Control blocks belief. There's a man named David I once spoke with. On the outside, he looked calm. He was successful, had a steady job, a family who loved him. But inside, David was exhausted. He felt like he was holding the strings of 1,000 puppets at once. If his children were late, he texted them again and again. If a project at work was due, he stayed up past midnight checking every detail. Even when he prayed, he didn't really pray. He bargained. He begged for life to turn out his way. And when I asked him why, his answer was quiet but heavy. I don't trust that things will work out unless I control them. Maybe you felt that too. That gripping fear that if you let go, everything will fall apart. But here's the paradox. The more David tried to control life, the less joy he felt in living it. His hands were always clenched. His chest was always tight. And beneath it all was one unspoken belief. I don't trust life. Buddhist wisdom teaches us that control is often a disguise. It looks strong. It looks responsible. But at its root, it's usually fear. Fear of loss, fear of pain, fear that life will not be kind. So I asked David a different question. What if trust isn't about believing nothing bad will ever happen, but believing you'll be able to meet whatever comes? That question landed deep. Because trust is not blind. Trust is active. It's choosing to take the right step forward while letting go of how the road will twist and turn. Think of it like planting a seed. You prepare the soil. You water it. You give it sunlight. But after that, you cannot force the seed to sprout. You trust the process of life to do what it knows how to do. When David began to live this way, something shifted. He still worked hard. He still cared deeply for his family. But he stopped strangling every outcome with his worry. He started planting seeds and then stepping back to breathe. The result? He slept better. His laugh came back. His children felt more free around him. And perhaps most importantly, David began to feel carried by life instead of constantly dragging it forward. And here's the real turning point. The moment you shift from control to trust, fear loosens its grip. Because fear says, I must make sure. But trust whispers, I am supported. So let me turn this toward you. Where in your life are you trying to control every detail? Your relationships? Your future? Your health? What would happen if, just for today, you chose to do your best and then release the rest into the flow of life? If you've ever felt the heavy weight of trying to control everything, type the letter T in the comments. Not for trouble, but for trust. It's a small reminder that you're ready to let go, even if just one finger at a time. Because here's the truth. It's inviting you to dance with it. And no dance works if one partner tries to lead every single step. David used to say, if I don't control things, they'll fall apart. Now he says, if I stop trying to control everything, I finally get to live. And maybe, just maybe, you'll find the same freedom waiting for you. 6. Letting go is the way to begin growing up. There's a woman named Rachel I once met at a retreat. She was talented, creative, and kind. But she confessed something quietly one night. I feel like my world is getting smaller. And when I asked her why, her answer was almost a whisper. Because I'm always afraid. Afraid of failing. Afraid of losing. Afraid of making the wrong move. Her fear had wrapped itself around her like a tightrope. She had dreams of starting her own business, but she stayed at a job she didn't love. She had ideas for art she wanted to create, but her sketchbooks remained closed. Even in relationships, she held back, never saying what she truly felt. Her life wasn't broken, but it was shrinking. And maybe you know that feeling too. When worry keeps trimming the edges of your life until there's less and less space left to breathe. Buddhist wisdom teaches us something profound. Worry contracts, but letting go expands. When you cling too tightly, you cut yourself off from possibility. You shrink your goals. You tighten your emotions. You reduce your influence in the world. But when you let go, something incredible happens. Suddenly, there's space. Space for joy to return. Space for creativity to move freely. Space for life to surprise you. Rachel didn't understand this at first. She thought letting go meant losing control. She thought it meant becoming careless. But one evening during meditation, she realized letting go is not about losing. It's about opening. Think about it like holding water in your hands. The harder you squeeze, the more slips through your fingers. But if you soften your grip, the water rests gently in your palms. So Rachel began practicing this. Instead of obsessing over her fears, she started asking herself, what could open up if I simply stopped holding on so tightly? She began painting again, not for money, not for approval, but for joy. She started speaking her truth in small ways, sharing her opinions, expressing her emotions. And little by little, her world grew larger. She found new friends. She discovered unexpected opportunities. And her heart, once locked away, began to feel light. Here's the paradox. The moment you let go, you don't become weaker. You actually become stronger. Because your energy, once trapped in constant worry, is now free to flow into growth, love, and creativity. Letting go is not the end of something. It's the doorway into the larger version of yourself. So let me ask you, where in your life do you feel yourself shrinking? Is it in your work, your relationships, your ability to dream? And what might happen if, just for today, you let go of one worry, just one, and opened a little more space for life to move? If this resonates with you, type the number 6 in the comments, not just because it's today's lesson, but because 6 can be your reminder. Step into expansion. Because here's the truth. When you cling, you survive. But when you let go, you truly live. Rachel used to believe safety came from holding on. Now, she knows freedom comes from opening her hands. And maybe that's the next step for you too. Life begins to flow when you step aside. There's a man named David. For years, he tried to control every detail of his life. His career, his family, even the timing of when things should happen. He worked harder, pushed stronger, planned every step as if life were a machine he could engineer. But here's the truth. The harder he pushed, the more resistance he met. Projects that should have been smooth turned into endless obstacles. Relationships felt strained, like every word had to be measured. And inside, he was exhausted. Have you ever felt that way? Like you're swimming upstream, fighting against the current, only to end up in the same place, drained of all your energy? One evening, after another long day of frustration, David sat quietly and remembered something his grandmother used to tell him. Sometimes, the river knows better than you. 1. It sounded strange at first, but as he reflected, he realized maybe all his struggling wasn't helping. Maybe it was blocking the very flow he was searching for. You see, when we intervene too much, when we try to force life into the shape we think it should be, we unknowingly create resistance. It's like pressing your hands against the water, only to feel it push back harder. The more we interfere, the more energy we waste. Buddhist wisdom reminds us, letting go is not abandonment, it is trust. It's the faith that life has its own rhythm, its own intelligence, its own way of carrying us exactly where we need to be. So, David did something he had never tried before. He stepped aside. He stopped micromanaging every outcome. He still showed up. He still gave his best effort. But after acting, he allowed the results to unfold without forcing them. And slowly, something shifted. Conversations with his family became lighter. Opportunities at work appeared without him chasing. He began to feel, for the first time in years, supported by life instead of trapped by it. It was as if the current, once blocked, finally opened. Here's the paradox. When you release control, life doesn't fall apart. It starts to flow. The river carries you. The path becomes smoother. And in that flow you realize you were never meant to carry it all alone. Think about your own life. Where are you pushing so hard that everything feels heavy? What if, just for a moment, you stepped aside and allowed life to move on its own? This isn't about giving up. It's about partnership. It's about realizing that your role is to plant the seed, but it's the universe that brings the rain and the sunlight. When you let go, you're not left unsupported. You are carried by something larger, wiser, more compassionate than your own plans. So let me ask you, would you rather fight the current until you're exhausted, or step aside, trust, and discover where the river naturally wants to take you? If these words touch something inside you, leave a simple 7-inch in the comments. Not just as a number, but as a reminder that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is to step aside and let life flow. David thought strength was about control. Now, he understands true strength is about trust. And maybe this is the invitation for you too. Choiceless presence. There's a woman named Sarah. All her life, she judged. Not in a cruel way, but quietly, endlessly. She judged herself. I should be more successful by now. She judged others. Why can't they just do things the right way? She even judged life itself. Why is this happening to me? And each judgment was like adding another stone to the backpack she carried. Heavier, harder, exhausting. Can you relate to that? That subtle inner voice that never stops comparing, labeling, or measuring, telling you this is good, that is bad, this is right, that is wrong. One day, Sarah joined a silent retreat. The teacher there said something unusual. Stop choosing, stop judging, just observe. At first, she was confused. But how can I live without choosing, without judging? Yet, as she sat quietly, something shifted. When a bird sang outside, she didn't label it beautiful or annoying. It was simply a sound. When a thought of regret appeared, she didn't call it bad or useless. It was simply a thought. And in that moment, she discovered a state beyond judgment, what Buddhist teachers call choiceless awareness. This is not indifference. It's not pretending nothing matters. It's the freedom of seeing reality as it is, without immediately stamping it with approval or rejection. When you enter this state, actions arise naturally, clear, effortless, whole. You don't force decisions. You don't overthink. Life moves through you with a wisdom greater than thought. Think of it this way. When you stare at a muddy river, you can't see its depth. But if you stop stirring the water, it clears on its own. Choiceless awareness is the stillness that allows clarity to emerge. Sarah realized she had spent years exhausting herself with unnecessary labels. By setting them down, even for a moment, she discovered something powerful. She didn't need to do more. She needed to be more. And strangely enough, from that stillness, her actions became more effective. At work, instead of reacting out of stress, she listened deeply, and her team trusted her more. At home, instead of criticizing her partner, she offered presence, and their bond grew stronger. She stopped trying to control life, and life, in turn, began to flow naturally through her. This is the paradox. When you stop clinging to constant choice and judgment, you don't become passive. You become deeply alive. You respond not from fear or habit, but from a place of wisdom that was always within you. So let me ask you, what judgments are you carrying right now? What if you could place them down, just for a moment, and experience life exactly as it is? Imagine how light you would feel. Imagine how clear your path would become. If these words stir something in you, type the letter A in the comments. Let it stand for awareness, a gentle reminder that sometimes the most powerful choice is not to choose at all. Sarah once thought strength came from controlling everything. Now she understands that the deepest strength comes from presence. Presence without judgment, without labels, without resistance. And maybe this is what you've been searching for too. 9. Wu Wei, effortless action. There's a man named David. For years, David believed that the only way to succeed was to push harder. Work longer hours, plan every detail, control every outcome. And for a while, it seemed to work. But deep inside, he was exhausted. His body was tired. His heart was restless. No matter how much effort he gave, life always seemed just one step ahead, slipping through his hands. One evening, after another long day at work, David sat by a quiet river near his home. He watched the water move effortlessly, flowing around rocks, carrying leaves, shaping the land without force. And it struck him, the river never struggles. It never shouts, never resists, never forces its way. Yet it moves mountains. That night, he remembered an ancient teaching from Taoist wisdom, what the Chinese call Wu Wei, or effortless action. It's the art of doing without forcing, of moving with life instead of against it. At first, this idea seemed impossible for David. How can I live without controlling, without striving? Doesn't everything fall apart if I stop pushing? But the more he watched the river, the more he understood. Wu Wei doesn't mean laziness. It doesn't mean sitting still and doing nothing. It means aligning with the natural rhythm of life, so your actions become as effortless as water flowing downhill. Think about it. When you force things, you burn energy, create resistance, and often make the situation worse. But when you trust, when you let go of control, life has a way of guiding you toward the right place, at the right time. David began experimenting with this. At work, instead of obsessing over every detail, he focused on the flow of the project, supporting his team, listening more, controlling less. At home, instead of forcing conversations, he allowed silence, patience, and natural connection with his family. And slowly, something shifted. Life began to feel lighter. Opportunities showed up without him chasing. Solutions appeared where he once only saw problems. By letting go of struggle, he discovered a power greater than control, the power of harmony. It's like sailing. If you fight against the wind, you'll tire yourself out and go nowhere. But if you open your sail, if you align with the breeze, it carries you forward with almost no effort. Wu Wei is living with that kind of grace. It's trusting the current instead of swimming against it. It's remembering that you are not separate from life's flow. You are the flow. So let me ask you, where in your life are you pushing too hard? Where are you trying to force something that may, in truth, unfold naturally if you stepped aside? Sometimes the greatest breakthroughs come when we stop trying so desperately to make them happen. When we breathe, when we trust, when we allow life to lead. If this resonates with you, type the number 9" to the comments. Let it be a small reminder of Wu Wei, the wisdom of effortless action. David once thought success came from control. Now he understands that real success comes from surrender, from flowing like water, from trusting life enough to carry you where you belong. And maybe, just maybe, this is the invitation life is giving you right now. To stop forcing, to start flowing, to act by not overacting. Conclusion. There's a quiet truth that most of us spend our whole lives resisting. You don't need to control everything. Life was never meant to be wrestled into your plan. Think about it. How many times have you tried to bend reality into your design, only to feel more anxious, more tired, more lost? And how many times, when you finally let go, did things somehow fall into place, almost as if life knew better than you? This is the paradox. The more we push, the heavier the burden becomes. The more we resist, the more life resists us back. But the moment we soften, the moment we unclench our hands and release control, something extraordinary happens. Life begins to carry us, the way the wind carries a feather, or the way the tide carries a boat. It doesn't mean we stop living. It doesn't mean we stop caring. It means we stop forcing. We learn to trust the current instead of fighting it. There's a woman I once spoke with named Claire. She had been holding on so tightly to the idea of what her life should look like. The perfect career, the perfect marriage, the perfect timeline. But every time reality didn't match her picture, her heart broke a little more. One day she said to me, "I feel like I'm drowning in my own expectations." And I asked her, what would happen if, just for one moment, you let the water hold you instead of fighting to stay above it? Her eyes filled with tears, because she realized she'd never truly allowed life to hold her. She was always swimming against the current, never trusting the river that was already carrying her forward. When Claire finally surrendered, her life didn't collapse. It opened. She found peace not by gaining more control, but by losing the need for it. And isn't that the invitation for all of us? To live not in resistance, but in harmony. To stop gripping the steering wheel so tightly. And to remember the road itself already knows where it's going. So I want to leave you with this thought. What is one thing in your life right now that you can release? One place where you can loosen your grip, breathe, and let life guide you instead of forcing the outcome? Try it even just once. See what happens when you give yourself permission to trust. And if someone came to your mind while listening to this, maybe a friend or a loved one who's been carrying too much, share this with them. It might be the reminder they need that strength is not always in holding on sometimes, it's in letting go. So tonight, when the noise of the day quiets down, let this truth sit with you. You don't have to control everything. You only need to trust enough to let life lead. Because the real power isn't in resistance. It's in surrender. And when you live in harmony, not struggle, life reveals its gentleness, its meaning, and its quiet beauty. And maybe, just maybe, that's the beginning of the freedom you've been searching for all along.